The House on the Cliff. Chapter 1. The House on the Cliff. The sea had been rough since dawn. It hit the cliffs below the house with a sound that never stopped, a low, steady roar that filled every room. The windows rattled when the gusts came hard off the Atlantic, and the chimney sent its smoke sideways into the gray. The wind smelled of salt and pine and something colder. Michael sat by the window with a glass of rye, watching the tide climb. The glass left a ring on the table, and he didn't move it. He had learned not to move much. The house was quiet except for the wind, and he liked that. He had lived there long enough to know the rhythm of storms, the slow build, the hard break, the patient wait for calm. He wrote for a while each morning, though the words came slower now. When they came in fragments, sentences about weather, about time, about the space between people. He never sent them anywhere. They stayed in his notebooks, a dozen of them stacked on the desk, waiting for nothing. By noon the fog rolled in, and the world went white. He watched it swallow the trees along the road, then the curve of the shore. It was a kind of mercy, that fog. It covered what had gone missing. He thought he heard something then, the grind of tires on gravel. It was faint, almost lost in the wind, but it was there. He turned his head and listened. The sound came again, closer. Then a car appeared through the mist, slow and deliberate, climbing the narrow road that led to the house. He stood. His chest tightened before his mind caught up. There weren't many people who came that far out. The mail came once a week. The fisherman who sold him cod came on Fridays. It was neither of them. When the car stopped, the engine ticked once, then went silent. A door opened. A figure stepped out, coat dark with rain, hair whipped by the wind. Even from a distance he knew her. He didn't move at first. He stood in the half-light, watching as she crossed the yard. The fog drifted around her, softening her shape. When she reached the porch, she paused, hand on the rail, and looked up at the house. Then she knocked. He opened the door, and there she was, Elena. For a moment neither spoke. The wind moved between them, sharp and cold. "You're a hard man to find," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried something else underneath. "You found me," he said. "I did." She stepped inside, brushing water from her hair. The scent of rain and something floral followed her. She looked around the room, the bare walls, the desk, the books stacked on the floor. "It hasn't changed," she said. "It wasn't meant to." She smiled a little, then stopped. "You look the same," she said. "I don't," he said. "You just remember me that way." She set her bag down by the chair. "I was driving north," she said. "I thought I'd see the ocean again." He nodded. "You came to the right place. I wasn't sure you'd still be here. Where else would I be?" He gestured toward the stove. "There's coffee. Or something stronger." "Coffee first," she said. "Then we'll see." He poured 2 mugs and handed her one. She took it and warmed her hands on the sides. "Still black?" he asked. "Still black." They sat near the fire. The silence between them was old, familiar, but not comfortable. The wind pushed against the windows like it wanted in. "How long has it been?" she asked. 7 years, he said. "Maybe 8. Feels longer." It was. She studied him over the rim of her cup. "You're still writing?" "I try," he said. "Mostly the sea." "Of course you do." He smiled, faintly. "And you?" "I restore paintings," she said. "In Portland now. I fix what time has ruined, at least the parts that can be fixed." "That sounds like a good kind of work." "It is, sometimes." She looked around again. "This place, it's the same smell. Smoke and salt and old wood. I used to think it would fall into the sea. It still might." "Why stay?" she asked. He shrugged. "I like to hear the wind argue with the house. Makes me feel less alone." She laughed softly. "You always did say things like that." "I still mean them." Outside, the fog thickened. The world beyond the window disappeared. They talked about ordinary things then. The weather, the town, mutual friends they no longer saw. He told her about the fisherman who brought him cod and stories, about the storms that broke the windows twice last winter. She listened, nodding, half smiling. Later, as the afternoon faded, she asked, "Do you ever go back?" "Back where?" "To the city." "No. Not even to visit?" He shook his head. "Nothing there wants me." She looked down at her cup. "You don't know that." "I do," he said. "I learned it." A long silence stretched between them. The only sound was the fire, the soft crack of the wood as it burned. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet. "How's your husband?" She didn't look up. "He's not." He waited. "We separated last year," she said. It was a long time coming. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said. We both knew. He nodded. She met his eyes then. Do you ever think about it? About what? About us. Sometimes. Only sometimes. He looked into the fire. It doesn't do much good. No, she said. But sometimes it helps. He didn't answer. She set her cup down and walked to the window. The fog had started to thin, revealing a strip of dark water below the cliff. The tide was still climbing. It's the same sea, she said. It never stopped, he said. She turned to him. I wasn't sure you'd open the door. I wasn't sure either, he said. The wind shifted then, slamming a shutter against the wall. He stood to fasten it. She followed, holding her coat around her. Does it always blow this hard? She asked. Most days. He fixed the latch and turned to her. She was close enough that he could smell the rain in her hair. You could stay tonight, he said. The roads aren't good after dark. She hesitated. Just tonight. Just tonight. All right, she said. He brought in more wood, and they built the fire higher. He cooked fish in a pan with butter and lemon. She poured the wine. They ate at the small table by the window, the sea a dull gray shape beyond the glass. The meal was quiet. Between bites, she asked about his books, and he told her a little. Then she asked why he stopped publishing. I ran out of things worth saying, he said. That's not true. It felt true enough. You always said writing was just telling the truth, she said. It is, he said, and the truth stopped wanting me. She watched him for a while, then said, You haven't changed much. Maybe that's the problem. It's not a problem, she said. It's just who you are. The firelight moved across her face. She looked softer than he remembered, or maybe just tired. There was a faint scar near her lip he hadn't seen before. It caught the light when she smiled. They talked until the bottle was empty. Then the storm came harder, and the sound of it filled the house. Rain hit the windows, and thunder rolled somewhere far off. Do you remember the night the roof leaked? She said. I remember, he said. We stayed up till morning, catching water in pots. And drinking, he said. Yes, she said. Mostly drinking. They both laughed then, the sound breaking something in the air between them. After a while, the laughter faded, and they sat in the quiet. She said, You know, I used to dream about this house. The sound of the waves. The smell of it. Dreams are just old habits, he said. Maybe, she said. But sometimes they tell you where you left yourself. The fire crackled. He looked at her, really looked, the lines around her eyes, the way she held her hands together when she was thinking. She was the same woman who once left in the middle of a summer morning without saying goodbye. And still, here she was. You could have written, he said. I did, she said. Once. You never answered. He frowned. I never got it. She shrugged. Maybe it wasn't meant to find you. He thought about that for a long moment. Maybe not. The wind dropped suddenly, and the sound of the sea rose to fill the gap. It was louder than before, closer somehow. She stood. I should get my things from the car, she said. I'll come with you. They went out together. The air was cold and smelled of rain. The fog had pulled back toward the horizon, leaving the cliffs clear and sharp. Her car sat by the gate, slick with water. They opened the trunk and lifted her small suitcase. When they turned back, the first lightning flashed out over the water. Still afraid of storms? He asked. Not anymore, she said. I married one once. He smiled at that. And survived. Barely. They went back inside. The fire had dimmed to embers. He stirred it, and she placed her suitcase by the stairs. You can take the room at the top, he said. I remember it, she said. He nodded. It's the same. Nothing's changed. I see that, she said softly. She started up the stairs, then stopped halfway. Thank you for letting me in, she said. He looked up at her. You didn't give me much choice. She smiled, a small, tired smile. You could have shut the door. I thought about it, he said. Did you? For a moment, he said. Then I remembered how cold the wind can get here. She nodded, as if that were answer enough. Then she went up. He listened to her footsteps above him, slow and measured. When the door closed, he sat back down by the fire. The storm rolled over the house again, shaking the walls, but he didn't mind. He poured another drink and watched the flame bend in the draft. He thought of the years, how they had passed without warning, how memory had a way of circling back when you least wanted it. He thought of her, the way she had stood in the fog, half ghost, half truth. Outside, the waves broke against the rocks, relentless and sure. He closed his eyes and listened. Upstairs, a door opened, then shut again. He heard her walking, the faint creak of the boards. He didn't move. The sound of her was enough. When he finally rose, he added one more log to the fire and turned out the lamp. The room went soft with shadow. The sea kept roaring, the same as it always had. He looked once more toward the stairs and then at the window, where the fog had returned, thick and gray and forgiving. He sat back down and whispered to no one, just for the night. Then he listened to the storm argue with the house until the sound carried him to sleep. And when the morning came, he knew it would come like a debt. Chapter 2. The Dinner. By late afternoon, the wind had gone quiet. The sea lay dark and heavy under a clean sky, the color of slate. Gulls wheeled above the cliffs, their cries sharp and distant. The house stood still for the first time in days. Michael spent the morning writing a little, though the words refused to stay. They drifted, unanchored. He left the notebook open on the table and went outside. The air smelled new, rinsed clean. The grass bent under the wind's memory. He walked the edge of the cliff and looked down at the tide. The rocks below were slick and black. The water lifted and fell in slow, tired breaths. It was the same sea, always the same, but every time it seemed to hold something he hadn't seen before. When he came back in, the house was warm again. He found Elena in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, hands wet from washing fruit in the sink. She turned when he entered, her hair caught by a ray of late light from the window. "Morning walk?" she asked. "Afternoon," he said. "Lost track. You always did." He smiled. "Did you sleep?" "For a while," she said. "The wind kept me company." "You get used to it." "I don't think I could," she said. "It feels alive." He looked at her, then at the stove. "I thought I'd make dinner tonight." She dried her hands. "You cook now. When there's someone to cook for," he said. She gave him a small look. Not quite a smile, not quite disbelief. "Then I suppose I shouldn't refuse." He went out to the shed for firewood. When he came back, she was setting the table. 2 plates, 2 glasses, a small vase with dried wildflowers she'd found near the steps. The gesture felt like something from another life. "Looks civilized," he said. "Don't get used to it," she said. "I'm only visiting." He poured wine and put the pan on the stove. The smell of butter filled the air. The sound of it was soft, steady. She sat at the table, turning the glass in her hands. "You still drink the same kind?" "Habit," he said. "Some habits last longer than love." He didn't answer. She watched the sea through the window. "It's strange, being here again. I thought I'd forgotten it." "You didn't," he said. "No," she said. "I didn't." They ate in near silence at first. He cooked fish again, simple, clean. She picked at it, as if eating felt too personal. The wine helped a little. "You ever get visitors?" she asked. "Once in a while. The mailman. The fisherman. No one else." "You like it that way?" "I do." She nodded slowly. "You were always better at being alone." "I had practice." "So did I," she said. "Doesn't mean I liked it." He took a sip of wine. "You could have called." "So could you." "I didn't think you wanted to hear from me." "I didn't know what I wanted," she said. "Sometimes that's worse." The room grew quieter then. Only the sea spoke, faint through the glass. He said, "You left without a word." "I did." "Why?" She set her fork down. "Because you were already gone," she said. He looked at her. "That's not true." "It is," she said. "You were here, even then. Half of you lived in that book you were writing. The other half was waiting for the sea to tell you what to feel." He said nothing. "I tried to reach you," she said. "I sat across from you for months and watched you drift further away. I was trying to make something that lasted," he said. "And you did," she said. "It just wasn't us." The words hung there between them, the kind that couldn't be taken back. He stood and poured more wine. His hand shook a little. "I didn't know how to do both," he said. "Love and write. I thought one had to die for the other to live." "Then you chose," she said. "Yes," he said. "For what?" she asked. "For words no one remembers." He looked at her, anger stirring under the calm. "You think it's easy? Making something that holds meaning? Something that doesn't rot the moment you stop breathing?" "I think love does that too," she said. "It holds meaning. You just have to let it." He laughed, but it wasn't amusement. "Love doesn't last. It changes its name every time you look away." She stood then, sudden and sharp. "Don't tell me about love as if I never knew it. I waited for you to come home for a year." "A year, Michael." He stared at her. "You didn't write," she said. "You didn't call. You sent one postcard with 3 words, 'Still working.' Fine. That was all." He opened his mouth, closed it again. The room felt smaller. I didn't know what to say, he said. You could have said anything, she said. The fire cracked, and they both turned to it as if it might speak for them. The argument settled like dust, slow and heavy. She sank back into her chair. I'm sorry, she said quietly. He shook his head. Don't be. I didn't come here to fight. I know. They sat in silence again. The light outside dimmed into gold, then blue. After a while, she said, You ever think about how we sound? How? Like two ghosts trying to remember if we were real. He smiled faintly. Maybe we are. She looked down at her hands. It's strange. I thought coming here would make things clearer. And did it? No, she said. Just quieter. He poured what was left of the wine. Quiet isn't the worst thing. It used to scare me, she said. It still scares me, he said. They both laughed softly then, the sound thin but honest. When the plates were empty, she began gathering them. He tried to help, but she waved him off. You cook, I clean, she said. That was always the deal. I remember. She rinsed the dishes under cold water, humming something low. It was an old tune he couldn't place. He watched her, the small movements, the turn of her wrist, the tilt of her head. The domesticity of it felt dangerous, almost tender. When she finished, she leaned against the counter, looking out at the sea again. The first stars had appeared above the horizon. The light in the room had gone soft. She said, Do you ever wonder if we could have made it work? He took a long time to answer. Sometimes, he said. And I think maybe it wasn't meant to, he said. Some things burn too bright to last. She turned to him. That's what people say when they're afraid. Maybe, he said. Maybe I was. She crossed her arms. You're not afraid now. I'm older now. That's not the same thing. He looked at her. No, he said. It isn't. The house creaked with the shift of wind. She said, You still write about us, don't you? I don't write about anyone anymore. But if you did. He met her eyes. Then yes. A small smile came and went. I thought so. They sat again, facing the sea. The light faded until only the fire held color. He said, Do you regret it? What? Leaving? Do you regret letting me? She asked. He thought about it. Every day, he said. Then we're even, she said. The quiet that followed wasn't painful this time. It was the kind that comes when everything necessary has been spoken. She stood, stretched, and looked toward the stairs. I think I'll turn in, she said. He nodded. All right. She hesitated. Thank you for dinner. He smiled. It was good to have company. She paused at the foot of the stairs. You're not lonely, are you? He looked at her, then out at the sea. Only when it's calm. She nodded. I'll see you in the morning. He watched her go. The sound of her steps faded, soft against the wood. He sat for a long while, staring into the fire. The argument replayed in his head, but softer now, its edges worn by exhaustion. There had been truth in it, and maybe that was enough. When the flames sank low, he stood and opened the window. The night air rolled in, cool and full of salt. The stars were clear, sharp as nails. He listened to the sea breathe below the cliff, steady, endless, old. In the darkness, he said her name once, quiet enough that even the wind didn't answer. Then he closed the window, turned out the lamp, and let the quiet have him. Outside, the tide rose again. Inside, the fire flickered once and died. Chapter 3. The morning after. The morning light came pale and soft, slipping through the curtains like a quiet apology. The sea below the cliffs was calm again, the first calm in weeks. Waves brushed the rocks without anger, their rhythm slow and sure. The world felt emptied out, as if the night had taken something with it. Michael woke early. The room was still, the sheets cold where sleep had failed to warm them. He sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the faint hum of wind at the window. For the first time in months, he didn't reach for his notebook. He just sat there, breathing. Downstairs, he heard movement, the sound of a cup set on wood, a soft clatter of dishes. He rubbed his face, put on a shirt, and went down. Elena was in the kitchen, hair loose, wearing the same sweater from the night before. She looked different in the morning light, softer somehow, less guarded. She turned when she heard him and smiled a little. Morning, she said. Morning, he said. I made coffee. It's not terrible. That's an improvement, he said. She laughed. Don't start. He poured a cup and sat across from her. The steam curled between them, carrying the smell of something earthy, familiar. They drank in silence for a while, the way people do who once knew each other's silences well. Outside, a gull cried. The sound echoed faintly through the open window. You were up early, he said. Couldn't sleep, she said. I kept hearing the sea. It's quieter now. It's never quiet, she said. Just different kinds of loud. He nodded. You always said that. You always said I was dramatic. You were, he said. I still am. He smiled. I noticed. She looked at him for a long moment, then away. About last night, she began. He raised a hand. You don't have to. I want to, she said. We were both sharper than we needed to be. Maybe, he said. But maybe it had to happen. Why do we always talk like something has to happen, she said. Like everything needs to mean something. Maybe that's how we survive it, he said. She looked down into her cup. You and your meanings. It's all I've got, he said. No, she said. It isn't. The morning light shifted, brightened. It caught her eyes for a second, still the same shade he remembered, though they carried years now. He wondered how he had ever thought time could erase what it had carved so deep. Do you ever think about what came after? She asked quietly. After us, he said. She nodded. Sometimes, he said, when I see couples in town, or when I hear a song that I know you used to hum. You remember that? I remember everything, he said. She smiled sadly. That's your curse. He took a sip of coffee. And yours? Believing memories are enough. They sat for a while longer. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It just was. After breakfast, she asked if he wanted to walk down to the cliffs. He nodded, and they went. The path was wet, but steady underfoot. Grass bent gently with the breeze, glistening where dew still held. The sky was clear now, the kind of clean blue that made distance seem infinite. They walked side by side without touching. The air between them held something alive, something that didn't need to be spoken. Do you remember the summer we built that bench? She said. The one that fell apart a week later? Yes, she said. You blamed the nails. I blamed your impatience. And we were both right, he said. She laughed. We were terrible at practical things. We had other skills, he said. Like fighting. He smiled. Among others. She stopped near the edge of the cliff and looked out at the horizon. I used to come here after you left, she said. I'd stand here and imagine what it must be like to live in that house alone. And what did you imagine, he asked. That it would be peaceful, she said. Now I see it's just quiet. He didn't answer. She turned to look at him. Do you like it? She asked. The quiet. Sometimes, he said. Other times it feels like a punishment. For what? For not knowing what to do with love when I had it. She looked at him, eyes searching his face. That's not punishment, she said. That's just being human. He wanted to believe her. But there was something about regret that made even forgiveness feel like a story you tell to make the ending hurt less. They stood there for a while, listening to the sea. The air smelled of salt and grass and something old, the kind of smell that reminded him life was longer than memory. Are you staying long? He asked. I haven't decided, she said. Do you want me to? He looked at her, then back at the sea. I don't know. That's honest, she said. I'll take it. He nodded. They turned back toward the house. A gull shadow passed over them, then vanished. The path wound upward, slow and steep. She walked a little ahead of him, her hair lifting in the wind. It struck him how natural she looked there, as if she'd never left. At the door, she stopped and touched the frame. You never fixed this, she said, pointing to the small crack near the hinge. I left it as it was, he said. Why? To remember how easily things break. She looked at him, and how easily they can be repaired. He didn't reply. She smiled and went inside. He followed her to the living room, where the fire from last night had died to gray ash. She bent to stir it, and he knelt beside her, handing her small pieces of wood. Their hands brushed once, brief, accidental, but it lingered longer than either expected. She said quietly, You still make everything careful. And you still rush, he said. Balance, she said. He smiled. Something like that. The new fire took quickly, crackling with life. The warmth spread through the room. They sat on opposite sides of the hearth. Do you think it would have been different if we'd met later? She asked. Later when? When we were ready. He shook his head. We'd have found a way to ruin it then too. She laughed softly. Probably. He looked at her, the way her eyes caught the firelight. But maybe not. She turned her gaze to the flames. Maybe not. The quiet held again. Outside, the sea kept its rhythm, slow, deliberate. He thought of all the years that had passed, all the nights he'd sat here alone, and how strange it was that one morning could make it feel like time had paused. You know, she said, I used to dream about this place. How so? In the dreams. You were always waiting. Sometimes angry, sometimes sad. But always here. Always waiting. Was I, he said. You were, she said. And when I'd wake up, I'd hate you for it. He smiled faintly. Why? Because I knew I'd never come back. And yet you did. I did, she said. And now I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Maybe you don't have to know, he said. Maybe, she said. But I wish I did. He leaned back, watching the fire. I used to think love was supposed to give answers. And now I think it's just supposed to keep you asking. She looked at him, quiet for a moment. That's very you. I'll take that as a compliment. It is, she said. The fire cracked sharply. He reached for another log, but she stopped him with a small gesture. Leave it, she said. Let it burn down slow. He nodded. Minutes passed like that, the kind that stretch but don't weigh. Eventually, she stood and went to the window. The sea was bright now, the surface shining silver under the morning sun. She said, I forgot how beautiful it is here. You forget most things until they remind you, he said. She turned. Do you ever wish we could start over? He thought for a long time before answering. No, he said, because I don't think we'd do it better. Just differently. She smiled. Maybe different would be enough. Maybe, he said. But maybe this, right now, is enough too. She nodded slowly. It is. They stood there, two people bound by what had been, unmoored by what couldn't be again. And yet, for that morning, it was enough. The quiet, the warmth, the shared air. A light breeze came through the open window, stirring the curtains. It carried the scent of the sea, sharp and clean. She breathed it in, then said softly, I think I'll go into town later. For what? To see if the bakery still makes those small lemon cakes you hated. He smiled. They probably do. I'll bring you one. You don't have to. I know, she said. But I will. He nodded. All right. She went upstairs to dress. He stayed by the fire, listening to her footsteps fade, the way sound softens when it's almost memory. He thought about the sea, the house, the years. He thought about her laughter from long ago, how it used to fill spaces that words couldn't. When she came down, she had her hair tied, a light coat on, and that same calm expression that wasn't quite peace. She stopped by the door. Will you be here when I get back? She asked. Yes, he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. Good. Then she was gone, the door closing softly behind her, the sound almost like a sigh. He sat for a long while, watching the fire burn low again. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Somewhere down the path, he could hear her footsteps fade into the distance. The sea kept breathing. He picked up his notebook at last. For the first time in months, he began to write. Not about love, or loss, or forgiveness, but about the morning itself. The stillness, the smell of salt, the sound of footsteps walking away, and the quiet promise that maybe, this time, she'd return. He wrote until the light shifted and the tide rose, and the page before him felt almost warm. Then he closed the notebook, leaned back, and let the sound of the sea fill the house. Outside, gulls turned above the cliffs. The day went on, calm and clear. Chapter 4, The Departure. The morning broke with a low sky and a slow wind from the west. The light was dull, almost reluctant, like it knew something was ending. The sea moved heavy and gray, its rhythm steady but indifferent. Michael stood by the window, mug in hand, watching the horizon. The coffee had gone cold, but he didn't mind. There was a stillness in him that matched the weather. He heard her moving upstairs, the soft rustle of a suitcase, the quiet scrape of a drawer closing. He knew the sounds without looking. He'd heard them once before, years ago, when leaving had been final. This time felt different, but he didn't trust himself to name how. When she came down, she wore a coat and carried a small travel bag. Her hair was tied back, her face calm. There was no trace of the storm that had brought her here. Train leaves at noon, she said. He nodded. It's a 2-hour drive. I remember, she said. Then you'll make it. She smiled faintly. If the car still runs. It does. I checked it yesterday. Always prepared, she said. He shrugged. Old habits. They sat at the table with the remains of breakfast between them. 2 plates, crumbs, an untouched apple. She wrapped her hands around her cup, though she wasn't drinking. I didn't expect to feel this way, she said. How do you feel? He asked. Like I'm leaving something unfinished. You are, he said. That's what we do. She looked at him. Do you ever get tired of being right? Every day, he said. She smiled. but her eyes were somewhere else. "You could come with me," she said. It was soft, almost casual, but the air around it shifted. He took a slow breath. "And then what?" "We'd figure it out," she said. "We tried that once," he said. "We were good for a while. Then the world came back." "The world always comes back," she said. "You don't have to let it win." He met her gaze. "I wouldn't know how to be out there anymore." "You'd learn." "Maybe. But this," he looked toward the sea, "this is where the noise stops. I need that." She nodded, looking down. "And I need the noise." "That's the difference," he said. They fell quiet. The kind of silence that sits between two people when both know the answer, but neither wants to speak it. He stood and began clearing the table. She watched him, then stood too. "Let me," she said. He shook his head. "I've got it." "You always do." He looked at her then, really looked. "You make that sound like a flaw." "It is," she said. "At least when you do it alone." He set the dishes in the sink. "Maybe I don't know another way." "You could learn that too." "Maybe," he said. "But not today." She came closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Faint, the same one from years ago. For a moment, he thought she might touch his hand, but she didn't. "All right," she said. He smiled slightly. "You won't." "I might," she said, "if I think of something worth saying." "That'll take a while," he said. She laughed softly. "You see? Still impossible." He wanted to tell her that she wasn't, not really. That she never had been. But the words stayed behind his teeth. Instead, he said, "You should get going soon. Roads are bad after rain." "Always practical," she said. "Someone has to be." She looked at him. "I loved that about you once. And now? Now I know it's a kind of armor." He nodded. "We all wear something." She moved to the window. The wind had picked up, carrying the smell of salt and pine. Her reflection wavered in the glass. Her and the sea behind her, both restless, both uncontained. She said, "Do you ever wish you could forget me?" He thought about it. "No," he said. "I wish remembering didn't hurt." She turned, her expression unreadable. "Then I suppose we both got what we deserved." "Maybe," he said. He helped her carry the bag to the door. The car waited just beyond the gate, silver dull under the gray light. She stopped at the threshold and looked back once more at the room. The firewood stacked by the hearth, the table where they'd eaten, the window framing the sea. "It feels smaller now," she said. "Things do when you're about to leave them." She looked at him. "You'll be all right?" He nodded. "I will." "Don't lie." "I'm not," he said. "I've had practice." She smiled sadly. "I know." They stepped outside. The air was cool, clean. The sea wind tugged at her hair. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "Walk me to the car?" He nodded, and they went together down the path. Grass brushed their legs, damp from the night's mist. At the gate, she stopped and turned to him. "I hate endings," she said. "Then call it a pause," he said. She looked at him for a long time. "And if it isn't?" "Then it's still ours," he said. Her eyes glistened just enough to catch the light. She leaned forward and kissed him. Not the way people do when they expect something after, but the way they do when there's nothing left to say. It was soft, brief, final. When she stepped back, he could still feel it, not as warmth, but as absence. She got into the car. He closed the door for her. The engine started after a pause, coughing once before it steadied. She rolled the window down halfway. "You'll write again," she said. "I already did," he said. She smiled. "Then send it to me." "I will." "Liar." He laughed quietly. "Drive safe." She nodded, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Two lives still entangled, still unwilling to let go, even as the distance between them began to grow. Then she shifted into gear. The tires crunched over gravel, and the car rolled forward, slow at first, then steady. She didn't look back. He didn't wave. He stood there until the sound of the engine faded into the wind. Then he turned and walked back up the path. The house felt larger now, emptier. He went inside and sat by the window, watching the horizon. The sea had turned silver again, calm as if nothing had happened. On the table lay her empty cup, the faint print of her lips still on the rim. He turned it slowly in his hand before setting it down. He opened his notebook, stared at the blank page, and wrote. She left in silence, and the silence stayed. He looked at the line for a while, then closed the book. He didn't need to write more. Some stories ended better without explanation. Outside, gulls turned in slow circles above the cliffs. The tide began to rise, patient and eternal. The wind moved through the grass in quiet waves. He sat there until the light began to fade again, until the sea turned dark and the house filled with the sound of the world breathing. He thought of her on the road, the long turns through the hills, the sound of tires on wet asphalt, the way she would glance once at the rearview mirror and then keep driving. He didn't imagine her coming back. He didn't need to. Somewhere between the leaving and the remembering, there was peace. Not much, but enough. When the first drops of rain touched the glass, he rose, closed the window, and lit the fire again. The flame took quickly, the light soft against the walls. He sat by it until the sound of the sea folded into sleep. Outside, night gathered. Inside, the house on the cliff stood still, waiting for nothing, holding everything. Epilogue: the quiet coast. Years later, the house still stood on the same cliff, though the sea below had eaten more of the rock. Winters had grown harsher, and the gulls fewer, but the mornings still began with that same slow light. Pale, deliberate, finding its way across the floorboards before touching the walls. Michael had aged into a kind of stillness. His hair had gone white, his hands thinner, his movements slower. Yet the rhythms of his days had hardly changed. He rose with the tide, boiled water for coffee, and stood at the same window to watch the sea. He had come to think of it as a kind of conversation, one that asked for nothing and answered in its own language. The notebook was still there, on the small table near the fire. Dozens now, stacked beside it, all filled with the same careful handwriting. They weren't stories, not really. More like fragments, sentences that trailed off, small memories caught between tides of thought. Some were dated, some not. He never read them back. He said once, to himself, that writing them was a way of keeping time. The village had changed, too. New houses along the road, the old and now painted blue. Sometimes he went there for supper, and the owner's son, who had taken over, would ask him about the past. Michael would smile and tell him stories about fishing boats and lost storms, about how the sea had once risen high enough to flood the lower fields. He never spoke of her, but he thought of her often, in the quiet hours before dawn, not in longing, not in regret. More like a presence that had turned into weather, something he could sense without needing to name. There were moments, rare but sharp, when he imagined her voice. A single word, or a laugh carried by wind. Sometimes he turned toward it, half expecting her to be standing there again, coat still damp from rain. But there was only the empty room and the sound of the fire settling. He didn't fight it anymore. Once he might have. Once he'd have written a letter he never sent, or walked to the post, and stood there too long, doubting himself. But that kind of urgency had burned out of him long ago. What remained was quieter, something closer to peace. Every spring, he planted new lavender by the fence. It always grew wild, bending toward the sea. It sent drifting into the house when he left the windows open. The color reminded him of her, not for any reason he could explain, only that it felt like memory translated into light. One afternoon, late in summer, a letter arrived. It was forwarded from an old address, one he'd given up years ago. The envelope was thin, the handwriting unfamiliar, but the name inside caught him off guard. Her daughter's. He stood by the window for a long while before opening it. The air outside was still, the waves soft and steady. He unfolded the paper with care. He passed away in the spring, she wrote. Peacefully. She spoke of you once, near the end, said you taught her the sound of silence. I'm not sure what she meant, but I thought you should know. The words sat on the page, small and certain. He read them twice, then folded the letter back and placed it in the drawer. For a long time, he just stood there, feeling the weight of something that wasn't grief exactly, but the shape of it, worn smooth with time. He went outside, walked down to the cliffs. The wind was cool, the light low. The sea was calm, almost too calm, as if it understood. He stayed until the horizon swallowed the sun, then turned back toward the house. That night, he lit the fire early. The air smelled of salt and pine and rain. He opened a new notebook and wrote. Some tides return, others don't. Still, the shore waits. He looked at it for a while, then closed the book. The fire crackled softly beside him. In that moment, he thought not of endings, but of continuance, how life carried on, untroubled, folding what was lost into what remained. The sound of the sea outside was steady, unbroken. He breathed with it. He had once believed solitude meant absence. Now he knew better. Solitude, he realized, was what stayed after everything else had gone. the quiet space where memory and presence met, indistinguishable. Before he went to bed, he stepped outside one last time. The sky was clear, scattered with stars. The tide was out, revealing a thin silver line of sand below the cliff. He stood there until the wind cooled his face. Then he whispered, not loudly, but enough that the night could hear, "Safe travels." And for a moment, he thought he felt it, the faintest touch of warmth on the air, like breath returned, like a tide remembering where it came from. Then the wind shifted, carrying it away. He went back inside, closed the door, and the house settled around him, the old wood sighing, the fire low, the sea whispering in the dark. And in that silence, Michael smiled, not from joy, but from recognition, that all stories, in the end, are the same. Someone comes, someone leaves, and the world keeps its rhythm. Outside, the lavender moved in the night breeze. The sea kept breathing, and the house, the quiet house by the edge of the coast, endured.